In a world reeling from conflict and desperate for stability, something is shifting in the Middle East. Headlines talk about normalization, security pacts, and post-war plans. The world's most powerful leaders are shuttling between capitals, trying to forge a lasting peace in a region that's known so little of it. They call it progress. They call it the future. But what if the blueprint for this very moment wasn't written in Washington or Riyadh, but was penned 2,500 years ago by a prophet in exile? The ancient book of Daniel describes a final 7-year countdown to the end of the age. It's a period triggered by a leader who will confirm a covenant with many. For generations, Bible scholars have debated what this could mean. But today, as we watch events unfold, the components of such an agreement are, for the first time, not just abstract concepts, but active topics of international negotiation. Now, we're not saying the prophecy has been fulfilled. We are not there yet, but the stage is being set in a way that is historically unprecedented. Today, we're going to dissect the shocking parallels between the diplomacy of 2025 and the prophecy of Daniel 9 verse 27. We'll look at the evidence and ask the question, are we watching the assembly of the prophesied covenant that kicks off the final 7 years? Let's break it down. Before we can compare today's news to the prophecy, we have to understand what the prophecy actually says. Let's turn to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. It reads, "And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering." Theologians have analyzed this dense passage for centuries. For many who study end times prophecy, this verse is interpreted in a very specific way. First, the many. This suggests the agreement isn't just between two nations, but a multilateral deal involving a coalition of powers. Second, 1 week. In the context of Daniel's prophecies, a week is widely understood to mean 7 years. So we're looking for a 7-year treaty. Third, there's the main figure, he. In futurist interpretations, this person is often identified as the Antichrist, a political figure with immense influence who confirms or strengthens this covenant. And fourth, the most chilling detail, 3.5 years into this 7-year period, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. For this to happen, Jewish temple sacrifices would have to be restored in Jerusalem. It's fair to say other interpretations exist. Some scholars believe this was fulfilled thousands of years ago, maybe by the Greek ruler Antiochus Epiphanes or during the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But the view that it describes a future 7-year period, kicked off by a major peace deal, remains a cornerstone of modern prophetic teaching, because no past event seems to fit every single detail. So, the prophetic checklist is this: a 7-year covenant confirmed by a powerful leader involving Israel and many other nations that in some way allows for Jewish sacrifices to resume before being stopped. For decades, this scenario seemed impossible, but in late 2025, the geopolitical landscape is shifting in ways that are bringing these very elements into focus. The first piece of the puzzle is the idea of a covenant with many. For most of its modern history, Israel was diplomatically isolated. But in 2020, something remarkable happened: the Abraham Accords. Mediated by the United States, these were a series of separate bilateral agreements that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations: the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. While not a single multilateral treaty binding everyone together, many saw this as the beginning of a potential coalition. For the first time, a group of nations was publicly making peace. Even through recent regional conflicts, key parts of these accords have proven resilient. Trade and security cooperation between Israel and the UAE, for example, have deepened. However, the picture isn't perfect. Public and political backlash over the war in Gaza has created strain, and the normalization process with Sudan has completely stalled amid that country's devastating civil war. Still, the focus has long been on expansion, and the grand prize is Saudi Arabia. Talks for an Israeli-Saudi deal were gaining serious momentum in 2023 before the October 7th Hamas attack brought them to a halt. Since then, the path has been rocky. Saudi officials have repeatedly stated that any deal depends on an irreversible path to a Palestinian state, a condition that has proven difficult for Israel's government to meet. As of late 2025, formal negotiations have not resumed. Instead, exploratory channels are being kept open, mostly through United States mediation. A comprehensive deal seems a long way off, with some insiders calling it virtually impossible without a major shift on the Palestinian issue. And yet, the components of a deal remain on the table: a potential United States-Saudi defense pact, advanced technology for the kingdom, and a regional security architecture that includes Israel. The framework for a massive, multinational security and economic agreement, a modern covenant with many, still exists, even if it's currently stalled. The next piece is the covenant itself, a pact that brings security. In the wake of the war in Gaza, the international community has been scrambling to formulate a plan for the day after. Various concepts have been floated by the United States, Egypt, the UAE, and others. The details differ, but the themes are consistent: some kind of multinational stabilization force, a transitional government of technocrats to run Gaza, and a massive international fund for reconstruction. For instance, many proposals include the idea of an Arab-led peacekeeping force to provide security as the IDF withdraws, and establishing a temporary committee to run public services. The goal is to demilitarize Gaza and rebuild it under international supervision. To be clear, there is no single, concrete blueprint that everyone has signed. These are still largely conceptual frameworks and proposals facing deep disagreements. But notice the pattern. The solutions being discussed are not bilateral. They are inherently multilateral, involving an international force and oversight from a coalition of nations. Any plan for lasting peace seems to require a pact with many. So you have the Abraham Accords setting a precedent. You have the ambition of a massive Saudi deal. And you have the discussions around Gaza building the architecture for a multinational security guarantee. The pieces are on the table, even if they haven't been put together. This brings us to the most mysterious part of the prophecy: the leader who stops the sacrifice and grain offering. Again, for sacrifices to be stopped, they must first start. This has always been the highest hurdle. It would require, at the very least, an altar on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the site currently home to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. For decades, this seemed like a fringe fantasy, but in recent years, the conversation has been pushed forward by dedicated activist groups in Israel. Organizations like the Temple Institute have spent decades meticulously recreating the sacred vessels needed for worship and training men of priestly lineage for that purpose. Then came the red heifers. According to the Bible, the ashes of a flawless red heifer are needed for ritual purification before temple worship can begin. In 2022, 5 such heifers were flown from Texas to Israel, a project supported by both Jewish and Christian groups. This sent a shockwave through communities that watch for prophetic signs. Now, there has been some debate about whether those specific heifers remain qualified under strict biblical law. Questions have been raised about their ritual fitness, and some activist rumors suggest that any official announcement of their disqualification might be misdirection. Regardless, the project continues with breeding programs in Israel working to produce more candidates. What's important is that for these private religious groups, resuming sacrifice is no longer just a theory. They believe the tools are ready, they have people in training, and they are actively trying to produce the final ingredient. Let's be clear. The idea of placing a Jewish altar on the Temple Mount is not part of any current peace negotiation. It remains an incredibly explosive concept, but it does make you wonder. In the context of a monumental peace deal that gives Israel ironclad security guarantees and normalization with the Arab world, could a concession be made? Could a deal be structured that allows for limited symbolic worship in a designated area? It's highly speculative, but it's a question being asked against a backdrop of tangible preparation. So when you look at the board, all the pieces are there. The diplomatic framework for a covenant with many was started by the Abraham Accords. The ambition to expand it is the subject of high-stakes, ongoing discussions. The template for an international security guarantee is being forged in the talks over Gaza's future, and the once unthinkable religious component, the preparation for temple sacrifice, is quietly moving forward. Never before have we seen these separate, prophetically significant streams of events all flowing at the same time. So, has Israel just announced an agreement that sounds exactly like Daniel 9 verse 27? The answer is no. Not yet. There is no single 7-year treaty. There is no world leader who has confirmed it. And there are no sacrifices on the Temple Mount. But to dismiss what is happening would be to ignore an incredible convergence of signs. We aren't watching a prophecy being fulfilled in a single news report, but we might be watching the construction of a stage. The props are being brought out. The actors are taking their places. We can't say for certain that this is the final act, but we can say the scene has never looked more recognizable. The parallels are hard to ignore, and the implications are staggering. The Bible repeatedly calls believers to be watchful and discerning of the times. What we're seeing today is a wake-up call. It's a call to pray, to read the Word, and to understand the profound days in which we are living. The stage is being set, and the world is holding its breath. If you want to stay informed and explore how current events align with biblical prophecy, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Share this video with others who need to see what's happening in our world through a prophetic lens. Thanks for watching.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.
Templo.